if you really don't want to be in a circle that's recorded, add NR for no record after your name. Like you'll see we have ECF for Empathy Circle Facilitator. If you add NR, I'll try to get you, not put you into the room. Wherever I am is the room that's recorded, so don't spill your deepest secrets if you don't want them, out there to the whole public. Let's see.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What happens to these recordings?
I post them to YouTube, and I actually posted them to Timothy Snyder's Facebook page and to his Twitter page. So I don't know. Hopefully he sees it, and maybe he'll join us someday, or who knows. It's like, or other people will see it and they'll say, hey, that's really something I want to be part of, and they'll come and join us. So it has that promotional aspect as well as the educational aspect too. Yeah, Judith.
Edwin, are the small groups recorded as well, or just the large group?
Only the small group that I'm in is recorded. So if you don't want to be in a small group that's recorded, just put NR, and I'll kind of shift you around. And Donna, yeah, the other group, there'll be 3 groups, only one will be recorded, the one I'm in. Donna, yep.
Yeah, just a thought. I don't mind the recording, but I don't know that I want my full name, and there is a way to rename yourself under participant. And I think I'm just going to go to Donna E, because that Eisenhower also draws a lot of attention. And when I was more active in Indivisible, I did have some problems. So it's just a suggestion. If you're uncomfortable, you can rename yourself with less of a full name. That's all.
Yeah, and I'll mention that actually it doesn't show the names. What we see, the names here don't show up in the recording.
Oh,
So
okay.
it doesn't even show up.
All right, well then we don't have to.
Okay, so great. Let me just move through this quickly because we want to get into our breakout room. So this is our 3rd session, our 3rd meeting, and we're on the chapters of On Tyranny, 20 Lessons for the 20th Century by Timothy Snyder. We're on lesson 5, remember professional ethics, and lesson 6, be wary of paramilitaries. And last 2 times we did the intro to the empathy circle, like how to do the practice, but most of us now know how to do it. If you do not know how to do the practice, I just posted a link to a PDF. So you can quickly download that and review it. And also you can be the last person in the circle to be a listener. And then you can sort of observe how it happens, and maybe the facilitator can support you, because you want to kind of save time on that. And we do have, we're going to be going for about an hour and 20 minutes, and then we'll come back into the full group to debrief. And we have Larry was going to post 2 questions he came up with just for contemplation. So if you want to post those, Larry, and just maybe read them too. And you're muted.
Thank you, Edwin. Sorry, I've got a different computer setup today that I'm still trying to get used to. And here are the 2 questions that I came up with. I'm going to copy and post them both into the room and put a little dash between them and read them out loud. So as I was reading through these chapters, as I was reading what Timothy was writing, I noticed that he was saying that the Nazi agenda might have been suppressed if professional citizens had followed their own blank. And I'll give a clue, that's on page 39. And the answer is their own ethics. If people follow their own professional ethics, the attorneys and all the other participants would not have done what was done. And the next one is, according to the author Timothy Snyder, in order for violence to overpower a democracy, what belief must be widely incorporated? And the answer to this is on page 43. And The answer is an ideology of exclusion. A belief or ideology must be widely distributed throughout the society, the ideology of exclusion. So I may not have done this right. I'll try to get it better next time. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thanks, Larry. So those are some questions to consider, and also just anything that comes up for you, that came up for you in the chapters. And so we're going to go into the rooms. The first room, Linda will facilitate, and I'll be here in the white room, and I'll join you in that room. And then the second room is Celine. Room 2 is Celine, and there'll be 6 people in that group, 6 people in the first group, and then 5 people in room 3. Candy, you're muted.
Sorry, I thought we said we were going to keep the group smaller.
Yeah, what we found is that the last time we went down, we dropped people, and then the rooms got really small, and then we had to like shuffle everything around. So it seemed like we're kind of at the point where it's hard to if we get the rooms if we make just 4, somebody might drop out, then we're 3. So 5 is ideal, but with about a number, it's going to be, looks like it's going to be 6.
You have 2 that have 6 in them. So, all right, whatever.
Yeah, try it. It's just see how it goes.
It makes a very big difference.
Okay, Glenn is really for that. He is really shaking his head. Okay, let me say, is everyone going to stay the full time? Because if you don't, that means a group will be really small. So Marie, I think, did you say you were going to leave?
Somebody just,
They stay.
Deirdre just came in.
Oh, okay.
Edwin,
I see that.
Did you-
That adds another person. So
Yeah.
that
I have a
means,
question.
okay.
so we have 18 now.
Okay, I will try to create another room. So if you can say something, Joan, keep people entertained.
I just-
Deirdre,
I'm not gonna
entertain
sit-
us.
I'm not gonna
It doesn't
sing.
matter to me.
Can you hear my soft shoe?
Yes.
Hi, Deirdre. Everybody introduce themselves. Do you want to do a quick one while Edwin's doing that, since you didn't get a chance to, your name, where you're from, and why you're interested in the book club? Sure.
Unmute.
Can you hear me? You can't hear.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, if you can introduce yourself, Deirdre, if you
You're muted.
unmute.
Are you talking to me? I am Deirdre Araujo. It's my husband's birthday today. My pronouns are she, they. I am so just intrigued by how such a small book of ideas can feel so relevant and generative, and it is also timeless. So I'm here for all of those reasons and the community.
Okay, so we have 2 rooms with 4, 1 room with 5, and another room with 5. So, and in one of the rooms with 5, I think one person's going to be dropping out, they said. So that's Larry, 1 room, yeah, and then Deirdre will facilitate another. Yeah, you were saying.
Candy wanted to say something.
Oh,
I just wanted to say, I mean, I'm glad, I appreciate that you're switching around, but I just want to say that it doesn't seem right to me to be planning the size of rooms for the people who are here based on the few who might leave. I don't know, that doesn't quite make sense to me.
no,
Again,
in one of the room, yeah, you're concerned about I'm hearing about making the rooms by the size of people if someone leaves. Room 2 that Selena's facilitating, Marie had said that she is leaving. And so they'll end up, there's 5 people in that room. If she leaves, there'll be 4 then. So
I think that we should be more focused on the people who are here than the people who will leave. Just a
Okay.
thought.
Candy, I just want to say one thing about that. I was put in a room last time with my sister-in-law, who I love, but I talk to her all the time. And
Right.
one other person, somebody dropped out, and it was the three of us. And I went right back to Edwin and said, "This is not going to work." So
Right.
I'm responsible for some of that, I think.
Okay, well, we should plan for what's best for the largest number of people who are here. I mean, that seems to me to be isn't that the
Okay, well,
demographic?
here's the thing,
Yeah.
we're going into the breakout rooms, and you can bring that topic up, and here we go. See you in the rooms, and Deirdre, you're facilitating that one room. So here we go. And here you go, Linda.
Yes. All right. Welcome back. Got a good group here, good mix. I will facilitate for, is it anyone here that has not participated in a circle before, empathy circle? So everybody knows how it goes. No questions. All right. When it is your time, I think we have, what is 5 minutes, Edwin? 5 minutes. And when your time is up, I'll hold up. Can you see that? And looks backwards to me, and if you're going too long, which I do sometimes, I get the ranting and raving, then I'll hold up the pause sign. And that's just, if you're in the middle of a sentence or a thought, finish the thought. Don't keep going with another thought, but finish that thought, and then we have enough time where everybody will get multiple times to speak. I'm gonna start off by being the listener, just to refresh memories, and I will start with asking Randy if he would speak to me.
All right. I'd be happy to. So one of the things that was really important for me with regard to the second chapter that you talked about, paramilitaries, was that I do absolutely see the danger of that happening in this country. I think we've seen already that that those groups were involved in January 6th, and that we have to be clear-eyed about that. We have to be honest about it.
Okay. Your concern is the paramilitary groups that are forming and exist in America today, and we need to be aware and not dismiss them or ignore them.
Yeah, and I also think that we also have to be aware of not just their actual forming, but the conditions that give rise to the formation of those groups.
So it's not just the formation of the groups, but the conditions, what's going on that give rise to those groups.
Yeah, and one of the things that I have really begun to focus on, especially recently, is how we treat members of our own military. And that we know that there were members of our military who were in part of some of those paramilitary groups, and who are susceptible to recruitment.
Okay, and so what you've really been focusing on lately is how we treat our current military or our military personnel. And we know some of them were involved in that January 6th insurrection. And again, I think what you're saying is what motivates them to want to join the paramilitary groups.
Yeah, and a book that I found absolutely fascinating that I read, I believe last year, Tribe by Sebastian Junger, talks about how our troops who come back are not well reintegrated into society.
Yes, the book is called Tribe, and I can't remember what you said the author's name was, but it talks about how tribes and how the military personnel that return from duty, they're not properly integrated back into society.
Yeah, and it's not even necessarily the violence that they encounter, because many troops who haven't really encountered a lot of violence suffer from PTSD. So what the real issue is, the alienation and the lack of acceptance, the lack of use that they find for themselves when they return to society, and they're really craving that sort of acceptance and belonging.
Okay, so you're concluding that it's not the violence, or whether they were in the military, whether they were exposed to violence or not, they can still suffer from PTSD, and it's not necessarily about the violence they may have or have experienced, but the feeling of alienation and exclusion. They're invisible, and you think that may be some of the motivation.
Absolutely, yeah. It was Junger's kind of suggestion that it wasn't necessarily the violence that they experienced, and so for me, a lot of what I want to focus on right now, and I tried to start this up, and I really have to return to it, but giving our returning military an outlet for discussion about their experiences and kind of sharing that burden as a nation, rather than allowing that burden to spill out in the form that we saw on January 6th in some cases.
Okay, so you what I said earlier about you were concluding that actually about the violence issue came from Junger's book, Tribe. And you feel like when the military personnel come back, we need to create an outlet where they can express themselves and not feel like they have to resort to violence.
Yeah, and where they have a true sense of belonging as well. Like
Okay.
people who love Brene Brown books, they will be very familiar with this concept. And I think it's absolutely true that people who don't experience that sense of belonging, they seek it out in sometimes destructive ways.
Okay, so people that don't feel included or part of a tribe will seek it out in some type of way.
Yeah,
Some way to belong.
Right, and these paramilitary groups, they know that, and they are specifically targeting members, especially former military, which is really dangerous.
So the paramilitary, you believe, target that loneliness and isolation that these military personnel may be feeling, and they use that as to bring them into the tribe, the group, and it's very concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel heard.
Okay, all right. Okay. Now, with me being the listener, I will speak and ask someone to listen to me, and I will ask Judith if she will listen.
Yes, I will, Linda.
Where's his? Wait a minute, I'm trying to find the question. What happened to it? Wait a minute.
It's whatever's alive for you.
Yeah, okay, but yeah, it was, well, both of them really were alive to me. I guess I'll speak on the one about ethics. Professional citizens, had they, in the book, the Nazi agenda might have been suppressed if professional citizens had followed their own ethics. Judith, that's what I'm speaking on, ethics.
Mhm. Right, that's really what is live for you right now, is that focus on if the professional citizens would focus on their own ethics, that and that would have helped prevent the Nazi agenda.
And I think it would go a long ways to helping what we are seeing and experiencing every day in our political arena.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it would help currently if citizens would be in touch with their own personal ethics, and that would have an impact in our current political arena or social arena. Mm-hmm.
Because for bullies or tyrants to become bullies and tyrants and sustain that position, they have to have people that will do their bidding, and another group that's, or maybe the same group that's afraid of them, of what they can do to them.
Mm-hmm. The bullies really need others to be able to do their bidding. And then there's also this other group who are fearful of the bullies and their followers.
Yes, and I'll have an example in Rudy Giuliani is a perfect example to me. He was the mayor of New York. They held him in high esteem. When the 9/11 happened, he was out there. They held him in high esteem, and you just assumed because he was an attorney and a mayor and of that age, you know, he had ethics and he had boundaries, and he knew how to operate within those boundaries.
Right, because Rudy Giuliani was recognized as, you know, an attorney, notable in the public eye. There was an assumption that, yeah, he would understand, he would be a man of ethics, and he would know how to work within legal and ethical guidelines. And it turned out to not be the case.
No, it's not the case. Rather than being ethical, at least to the legal profession, he fell under the spell, or has fallen under the spell, of Trump. And apparently he's real happy in that zone.
Mhm. There's something about the spell that he fell under, and he seems to be happy in that spell, in that
Yeah.
zone.
He's willing, he's willing to do Trump's bidding, no matter how ridiculous he looks.
Doesn't matter how it impacts his image, he's going to do the bidding.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't like Bill Barr, but I will say that he has some ethics, if not to himself, to the legal profession. He got out right before Trump's plan to you know, take the election, before that actually manifested itself. He got out.
Mhm. So Linda, you have some respect for Bill Barr, in that, you know, he departed, he got out right before things started to really go down the wrong path.
Yeah.
It's
So
not-
bottom line to me, ethics are rules and boundaries within which we as a society, and even professional organizations, you know, have to operate in. And it's all about keeping order and respect. And when a tyrant can make you look the other way to things that you used to think were repulsive or, you know, out of line, just to get their agenda taken care of, it's yeah, sad.
Yeah, sad when there's certain ethics and guidelines and boundaries that are essential for stability. And so when a tyrant or bully comes along and is able to dissuade people from those, then that's, as you say, very sad.
Yeah, and so the only recommendation I have is that you know, just stand your ground. As Cheney said, you know, history will tell the truth, and you don't have to support bullies and negative behavior. And
Mhm. Yeah, so important to stand one's ground, stay connected with ethics and values and beliefs, and bullies may come around and try to persuade you differently, but just so essential to stay grounded in what you know is true, and
yeah,
and what your values are.
yes, thank you. I feel fully heard. Okay, and you get to pick someone to speak to listen to you.
Okay. Is it Joran? Jaren? Do I have you?
It's
Yes.
Jeroen. It's good.
Joram.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, gosh, I feel like in terms of what's alive for me right now, there are, I think, some things that Randy said and some things Linda said I'm really resonating with. And I find it intriguing to think about those a group that is excluded may indeed be the very people who rampaged into the Capitol dome. If we look at them as disenfranchised veterans, that's a challenging thought, and I think it's a richly promising thought. I'll stop there.
Right, so you were thinking about things that Randy and Linda said, and especially in terms of like a group that's excluded, and you're thinking, well, an excluded group, you can even regard the group that stormed the Capitol as an excluded group, which would give a new perspective on thinking about this. Did I get that?
Yeah, it's such a difficult concept, and yet I gather, I know it's true, because of the empathy I have with the women, the police officers, the Black police officers, the white police officers at the Capitol building, and the terror that they experienced. It's a stretch for me, but I think it's necessary to understand, to have empathy with those people who were violent.
Okay, so on the one hand, you think it's challenging, but it's also true that it's important. Well, you're thinking about the people who were in the building and you empathize with them. At the same time, you're thinking, well, it's also important to consider the feeling, whatever matters to the people who were actually doing the acting there.
Yes. I'll add that I'm very intrigued by the idea of the veterans having an outlet when they come back. And as the great-granddaughter of a Civil War veteran, my great-grandfather wrote a memoir. And I have a friend who has a group called Right Face, W-R-I-T-E Face. Just met with him this morning, in a poetry group. And that's a way for some veterans to come together to share their stories with other veterans and with the larger public. And that's saved veterans' lives. So I'll stop there.
Okay, I don't think I can catch all of that, but you
That
say
was a
you
lot.
had a great-grandfather who was a veteran, and you understand the importance of yeah, like when veterans come back to have some outlet for them. And you remember a group of veterans that was called the Right Group, who was kind of doing something constructive to get back to normal life, I guess.
Yes. I agree. Lastly, the last thing I'll say is I certainly am in agreement with Linda that beliefs and values and ethics are foundational. And that's a grounding for stability in our society.
Okay.
And compassion.
Beliefs and values and ethics, like Linda said, you find them also important. And compassion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. That might be all I have to say right now. Oh, so
Okay.
do I choose
No,
somebody?
you say you're fully heard and then it's your
Oh.
Are
own.
you fully heard?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay, I can choose. So, Edwin, do you want to listen to me?
Yep, listening.
Okay, good. I think that's kind of related. So I have something that came up to me last couple of days, but it's kind of related to the chapter on ethics in professions like lawyers. And I heard about the news. There was somebody in a protest, in this case, Black Lives Matter protest, but it could even be a pro-Trump protest or whatever. who was trying to register for voting and was getting a sentence of 6 years in prison. And I think I heard something like some time ago as well, and I'm really upset about. I mean, this is in the US and living in the Netherlands, and this is kind of news that upsets me.
Can I reflect that? So I'm hearing you heard some news that really upset you, and it was someone who got 6 years in jail for sentence for voting, and that relates to you, to the topic of ethics.
Yeah. Okay, I'm also thinking, okay, it's like far away, and I'm glad I'm not like living in the US because of these things. On the other hand, people who live in the US, they just like have to deal with it. And for me, it's really worrisome because like this, it sends a signal out to the like wider public on one hand, and it's like saying we don't really want to have people voting, but okay, you can vote if you kind of like normal and you kind of already agree with the mainstream thinking. But if you do anything eccentric, then we actually prefer not to get your vote.
So this is kind of that sentence of 6 years sort of sends out a message that if you sort of toe the line, then it's okay. But if you do something different, you're gonna kind of be punished for it. And hearing you're kind of upset with it, and also say there's something about it's in the United States, so maybe they do things weird here or something.
Yeah, maybe I'm missing something, but for me, that's kind of like undermines the whole idea of democracy, that you actually try to be enriched by different varying opinions. And why would you want to exclude an opinion that actually demises yourself by excluding variation?
Yeah, so your view is that with democracy, you want to hear all the opinions, and you really value that. And like, why would you want to exclude? You just sounds like you just can't understand why anyone would want to exclude all those opinions, other opinions.
Yeah, exactly. And that makes me think like really bad things about what would be the motivations to do that. Like, they're really afraid of actually having different opinions, and they just try to silence people. That's how it appears to me.
So you're really trying to figure out the motivations. Why would they want to silence someone like that? And you just think there's just bad motivations behind it. They're just wanting to silence and suppress people.
Yeah, and then from the other side is like the person who's getting a sentence for 6 years. How are they going to think? Are they going to feel like motivated to participate in society? Isn't it just pushing people off and pushing them into corners that makes them do strange things? Even more in somebody who's been imprisoned or sentenced. They've been punished already. They're already like, oh, I don't really know. I want to be part of the society that's punishing me. And then again, they get another sentence of 6 years. Like, I don't think that's going to improve anything.
Yeah, so kind of pushing people to the margins of society is not going to improve it, and it's just going to alienate people. And I'm hearing you're valuing bringing people in and including them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel fully heard, but yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. Then I speak to Randy.
All right, I'm listening.
Yeah, the topic ethics was really interesting because I think that what's missing is sort of not just ethics, but a clear value system that values empathy, mutual empathy. And if it was me, I would add mutual empathy to the Constitution.
So you're really interested in the topic of ethics, but it can't stand alone. It has to have this idea of mutual empathy, which it sounds like you feel should be foundational to this country, and could, our Constitution could improve with including that.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like if you have the value there, then you can refer to it. And when people don't do it, follow it, you can say, well, we have this Constitution, we have this agreement, we want to have mutual empathy, everyone's included, everyone gets heard. And then, you have something instead of, hey, it's all happiness, self-interest, greed, whatever you want to do, it's all, up to you. And then, why, there's a good reason why things are so, you don't have that reference to the better angels, braver angels of our nature.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like you see the Constitution and the values that it lays out as a reference point.
Mhm.
And it's especially important not when we're just thinking happy thoughts, but when the negative things come around, that we refer to that as something that can remind us of those values. And it sounds like if empathy were baked into that, we would be reminded of that as well.
Exactly. And let's see. Then there was what you were saying about the paramilitaries and the alienation. I see that as well. That, see, for me, it's like every problem, every nail, the answer is the hammer of empathy. Oh, there's a problem, the hammer of empathy, whack.
Yeah.
So that's me. I'll pause there.
Okay, yeah. So your work obviously puts empathy front and center, right? So when you see a problem, it's kind of like it always becomes a nail because you have this hammer that is empathy, and so you always try to apply empathy to every problem that you see.
Yeah, so with the military, they have a boot camp. Let's make you a killer, right? Let's be willing to kill. But let's have an exit boot camp that makes you empathic and be able to listen to others, trains people in empathy circles, and trains people to be trainers of others. And they actually do some training, and then they go have empathy circles with their family where they kind of reintegrate, learn how to listen to each other, and have constructive dialogues and connect with their humanity, basically.
Right. So when people are entering the military, we think very, very strongly about how to make them really effective at their jobs, which can be to be killers. But when they're leaving the military, we don't plan as readily to help them reintegrate into society and make them empathetic and help them share those skills with the people around them.
Yeah, when we take it in Berkeley, when the political right came to Berkeley, and then there was counter demonstrations with Antifa and so forth, we were there with the empathy tent, offering to listen to both sides. And I remember it was usually the right wing that would come early. And we sat down with one guy that was ex-military, and it was just, a bunch of 4 or 5 of us and him doing an empathy circle. And he did an empathy circle. And he said after, he said, I'm ex-military, and if you guys need support, you let me know. I'm here to protect you, So he was offering to protect us in the coming melee that was going to be coming up. So because we had listened to him, we had just done an empathy circle where he was seen and acknowledged and included. Yeah.
All right. So your experience, especially with this person who came from the political right and was there in Berkeley and perhaps fit some of your stereotypes there, but you listened to him with empathy, and you really made a connection, and he was offering to protect you, perhaps as repayment for the appreciation that he had felt for your empathetic listening.
Yeah, and if you look at any, there's a high degree of suicide in ex-military policing and so forth. And if you ever have any sort of a, suicide hotline, it's all about empathy. I'm here to listen to you, tell me what's going on for you. And that empathy takes people from a sense of alienation and brings them into a sense of connection. So again, the hammer of empathy.
Right. So you
problem.
you do legitimately see a place for empathy to be a tool to help people, ex-military members, ex-police who have experienced extreme environments, and to help head off this issue of suicide amongst them. So
and alienation.
And alienation, indeed. So even though sometimes it feels like you're applying this tool willy-nilly, that there is a legitimate case study for how empathy does apply to help these folks.
I feel very well heard. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. And I'm going to ask Jeroen to listen to me. Let's see. So what do I want to talk about? I think there was something really powerful about following one's own code of ethics from that chapter, and that's something that I've been very focused on, especially with my New Year's resolutions this year. And so there are 2 that are particularly important that I plan to talk about that kind of apply to this.
Okay, then here you say 2 New Year's resolutions that apply to something about you find power in having a personal ethics.
Yeah, so one of the resolutions really does directly apply to ethics, and it is really to do the right thing in the best thing that I know how in every situation that I know of, and that is extremely hard given the complexity of the human condition.
Okay, so one of your resolutions applies directly to personal ethics, which is centered around doing the best thing you can do in some situation.
Yeah, and the other part of the resolution is being as open and honest with as many people as I possibly can, because I do think that that's the key to living up to the first part. It kind of enables you to be more ethical, especially when you let others in on your ethical calculus in each situation.
Okay, so the second part is like being open to listen to others. No, sorry, to be more honest about things to as many people as possible, which you see as a key to also the first part, which is to do the best that you can.
Right, and I think with radical openness, we can really start to get closer to living up to our values because we can open that window to other people to see the trade-offs that we are looking at, and that pretty much no decision in this world, no difficult decision is black and white, right? So when we open up our reasoning, it becomes easier for us to stick with our principles because other people are not going to try to push us off those principles as much because they'll understand our reasoning.
Okay, so by being open so that other people can see what principles are behind your actions, it's going to make it easier to do those things, and people are responding to that in more constructive ways.
Yeah, and there's another side to that though, that when someone is being open with us, right, the only way that we're going to enable each other to be as open as possible is if we are willing to accept others' shortcomings and forgive them. So when someone has a track record that we're not happy with, but they are willing to live up to a certain ethic, I think we should be more open to forgiving them for their past foibles, and that will enable us to fully celebrate their current embrace of the values that we agree with.
Okay, I'm not sure I got this completely, but so at least the first part was like, of course, you need to be able to accept people even if you're not so happy with what they've done, in order to invite them to be more open. And somehow that makes, even if they're willing, they need to be trusting that they will be accepted as they are. And the rest, I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good encapsulation of it. I think it's really important for us to give people space to be human and to make mistakes, and recognize that we ourselves make many of those same mistakes, and also be willing to point out to that person when we see them make a mistake that we may have made a similar mistake in the past. And I think this is what motivates people to be more open with us.
Okay, so to me, the way to be more to get people to be more open is, part of that is on the one hand, like being okay with their mistakes, but at the same time also saying like, hey, I'm not perfect either, I also make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess getting back to this topic about living up to professional ethics, I think we've all been in situations where it's a very difficult ethical choice, and and being open about that is one of the major ways that as a society we foster a true exchange of ideas, which is vital to the health of our democracy.
So the ethics question when it comes to professional settings is also related to how they experience that they're being welcomed for making mistakes, for opening up, even if they might not be perfect. I'm not sure I got all of that.
Right, and really, and just the exchange of ideas for the health of our democracy. But I see that my time is done, so thank you.
So you see it as very important for the health of our democracy to exchange ideas and invite people, give them the space that they can be open, that they feel trusted, that they trust to be open.
Absolutely, yes. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay. Linda, would you listen to me?
Who are you asking?
Linda.
Sure, I'm sorry. Yes, I was.
Although I'm not sure if I've got a lot to tell actually, but well, one thing, I mean, everything that people that the group says, it's like resonating with me.
Okay, excuse me. You need to speak up a little. I'm having trouble hearing.
Okay. Actually, I'm thinking like what I want to share, because I just agree with things that I've heard so far. I do believe that, like, especially what Randy said about like giving an environment, to provide an environment where people, they are comfortable with making mistakes. Like if everybody's like scared of being honest, then of course they're not going to be honest.
And excuse me, you agree with what Randy was saying about creating a space where people feel like they can be honest, but people aren't being honest. You know, you question, you know, would you want to be honest? Do you want to be honest?
Yeah, and also considering the fact that we do not really have a space where you can say whatever you want. I find it, I mean, I can understand that people are not honest. I'm not so surprised about that. It's like, maybe you want to reflect that. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, you were saying that we don't, yeah, it's just the enunciation, I'm getting it. But you were saying that we don't have a space where people can be honest, and I just lost it.
That's okay, but I think I'm going to continue from there. Like politicians, they're not honest, it's quite clear. That, I mean, most people agree that some politicians are not honest. Maybe they don't think some other people in politics are not honest, but anyway. Still, of course, they cannot be speaking freely in the position they are, because when they would be open about their opinion, they probably won't be able to do their job anymore.
Okay, so you in politics, you see both sides are not being honest, or each side is not being honest, one and then the other one. And you believe that politicians can't always be honest because they won't be able to do their job.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's like healthy to like try to point out where they are not honest. Like if I see lots of like people being angry at politicians for not being honest, and at the same time I'm thinking, well, of course they're not. So, and that's also maybe the reason that they are not, because as soon as a scandal comes out or something comes out that is negative, people blow it up as a scandal.
Yeah.
So there's no environment for them to be honest.
Yeah, you conclude that politicians can't be honest because if they are, then the people, the public will, attack them. And and an example is when stuff comes out, when things surface that they haven't been honest about, that's exactly what happens is people attack them. So you hesitate, or politicians hesitate to be honest.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's kind of a lot more to it, but yeah, thanks. That's it.
Okay. All right. You feel like there's another level to it, but you want to stop now.
Yeah, it's going to be too much. Thanks.
That's okay. You still have time. Okay, I will ask Edwin
Listening.
to listen. I want to respond and comment on a couple of things. Urin asked earlier, why people don't want opposing views or whatever, and I think that goes with the fact that humans are tribal animals, and you don't want opposing views because that means that one of us got to be right and one of us got to be wrong, and then we may not, get to stay in that tribe. So it's all about power and, and whoever is on top. And it goes with the group. When I say tribes, it's also group mentality. It was a lot of people, I believe, that, well, let's go back. Okay, I'm gonna stop.
Okay, so you're addressing kind of your room's question about why that the punishment for this person happened, and your answer to that is it's about tribalism. People don't want differing views; they want to kind of keep their tribe together, and
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
And it's all about power.
Oh, and
It's all
power.
about
Yeah, I missed
power.
that. Mhm.
And it's all about belonging too. We all want to belong to a group.
So it's about kind of the nature, maybe a society is it's about power, and people have this motivation to belong. So it's about, you want to belong to a group is another sort of a motivation.
Exactly. And that kind of piggybacks on what I think Randy or maybe Urim was talking about, the paramilitary that come out and they haven't been deprogrammed. And they don't feel like they are a group like they were in the military.
So that really ties in with the military issue that the military is coming out, and they had a group, they had a belonging, and they come out and they don't have that group anymore, and that's like they're maybe looking for that group, and that's a motivation.
But the wrong group can push us closer and closer to tyranny. And when I say the wrong group, I mean the group that attacked the Capitol on January 6th.
So people are looking for a group to belong to, but they can join a group that can take them towards tyranny.
Yeah.
And the Capitol event, it was an example, case in point.
Yeah, because I believe that there were many people out there that did not, had no intentions of being violent, scaling the walls, beating up the police. But they got caught up in the group, in the tribe. And
so there was sort of a lot of people would never have thought of kind of doing that violence and attacking the police, but they got caught up in the group mentality and the mob sort of group dynamics of it and just got caught up in it.
Yeah, and I think that same theory would apply to some of these people that have become conspiracy theorists, or they believe the conspiracies that they hear. Again, on the internet, you are physically alone, but you can connect with a group virtually.
So it kind of relates to the conspiracy theories that you can be part of a group and you're alone kind of on the internet, but then you can join these groups and feel maybe connection. And that's maybe a motivation for joining conspiracies.
Yes, and we need to, I think, be aware of that need to be a part of a group to the point that you will go off the cliff with the leader, even though you would normally jump that cliff, off that cliff.
Yeah, you got to be aware that if you can join a group, have that sense of belonging, but be taken off by a cliff by a leader, whereas otherwise you may not have done that.
Yeah, and so people, they when they say what I've heard, the talking points that I've heard from somebody else over and over again, I want to ask them, how do you know this? Have you researched this? Have you thought about this? And usually the answer is no.
So there's people who just sort of kind of parrot sort of talking points from others, and you kind of question them, and yes, if you really looked into this deeper, and they haven't. And
yeah, thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay, speak to Judith then. Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to say something about Randy's Braver Angels, that there's a Braver Angels here in San Francisco, and we had done some empathy circles with some of the people there. And one of the guys there called, and he said that they were going to do some circles with, they had a small group of Republicans and mostly Democrats, and he was like really worried about the whole structure. And he did empathy circles, and it worked like fantastic. And he called me twice. You know, the first time he didn't get through, the second time he got through, he said, "I had to tell you this. It worked so well." He just really wanted to share his gratitude for the empathy circle process, for holding this left-right dialogue in place. I think it was about vaccines or something.
Yeah, so he contacted you and to say, hey, this really worked. The structure of the empathy circle really worked with this group of Republicans and Democrats, and he was pretty excited about it. And then I gather you were pretty excited about
Yeah, I was like, yeah, right on. This feeds me, right? This gives me energy. Like when people kind of give this kudos. Yeah, it was great. But I mean, to really, he had to call up and go through all this stuff to really, do it. And so it feel pretty good.
You got pretty energized around that. Yeah. It really gave you a whole lot of motivation to keep going with what you're doing. And it was pretty satisfying for you to hear that.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing I was thinking about is, I think, about politicians. Urim is talking about politics. I am now a politician. I am running for Congress as the empathy candidate. So am I being dishonest? I say, yeah, we need to solve all of our social problems with first listening to each other. So that's my honesty. So it's kind of funny to think of myself as a politician. So yeah.
Yep. You're the guy, you're the politician who's holding up the flag for listening is kind of the golden thread to like solve a lot of problems. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're now a bona fide politician.
Yeah, even filed with the FEC and everything. I got the paper, Edwin for Congress. It's filed with the FEC, and we're getting a bank account next week. So,
my goodness. Yep, you got the paper, bank account. You're on your way.
Exactly.
On that path.
And the other thing, it's for me, like with the solution to the Capitol rioter thing and the police, I would have held a whole series of empathy circles with the rioters and the police. Say, hey, let's have some publicly recorded empathy circles where you listen to the impact that your actions had on the police and so forth. So they'd have like an empathy circle, 2 or 3, at least maybe 3-hour, dialogue, 2 police, 2 rioters, where they really just talked it out and heard each other. I think that was recorded and publicly posted.
Yeah, the impact. So they had a chance to sit with the impact of that event and how their actions impacted the police, and to have a series of meetings like that to process what happened there.
And that's actually one of my plans is if I got into Congress, I would, I don't know if it's request, demand, or, push for having empathy circles between the Republicans and Democrats. So it's 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. And I think that should actually be like one of the laws that every month they have each Congress member has an empathy circle, that it's recorded. And maybe the topic is just something like, how might we bridge the social and political divides that we're dealing with? So they would just get, they would have to, it's part of the structure is you guys got to get to all women, men, whatever, get together and listen to each other and sort of institutionalize it.
Mhm. That's something that you could envision doing is find a way to institutionalize some structure so that there was a requirement of some sort for these opposing sides to sit and talk about how they can cross this divide, how they can begin to work together.
There's a training about empathy on that. There's this big training thing where they have all these famous people doing. I'll pause there and come back to it if there's time. I feel heard. Thanks.
So do I go next here? Is that how that goes?
Yes. Now you pick someone to listen to you.
Yeah. Linda, I'll ask you.
Okay.
So there's something that I come up against, not just me, I think others come up against it. What do we do in the face of, I don't like to use this word, but I think it's a reality. When people choose to go down a dark path of what I would call evil, and that is, I think it's one thing when there's a willingness, as Randy's saying, a willingness to live up to an ethic. There's an openness to that. There's like, okay, I screwed up, I messed up, I'm human. And I really want to be seen as somebody who can change. That's one thing. Yeah, I'll stop there. Yeah.
So you question why people choose to go down these dark rabbit holes of evil. And you agree with what Randy said, that, we need to be more empathetic, forgiving.
Well, I do agree with that. Yes, I think that's necessary. And I also know that when I come up against survivors of the Holocaust, and not against, when I have met survivors of the Holocaust, and I've heard their stories. One woman in particular, I wrote a long poem about having met her on a long flight, 12, 13 hours from Austria to the US.
You don't want to say come against, but when you met or interacted with these people, and especially the survivors of the Holocaust, you actually met one of them and had time to talk to them, and you've written a poem. You met this lady on a long flight from Australia to the US?
Yeah, Austria. Yeah, Austria. Yeah. So she told me her story, and I've sat with, when I worked in the inner cities, so I'm a therapist, so I've heard many, many stories. And I've sat with some of the most profound sessions I've had have been with incarcerated older Black men.
Okay. You're a therapist by trade. You've had a lot of solid conversations, and some of the most profound ones have been with the older Black male prisoners.
Yeah. And so they shared their stories with me, and then what they've known, a few of them, what they've known of their own histories, and family histories.
Oh, and they share with you their family histories or what they know of the family history.
Yeah. And then how they've been, how they encountered racism in their current lives when I sat with them.
Oh, and they talk to you about how they have incurred racism in their present lives.
Encountered
Present.
it.
Yeah.
So,
Encountered.
so that has led me to believe that there's a choice that we all have to get pulled into the lore of hatred and malice, or to go down another path of compassion and yeah, I'll just stop there.
So you've concluded that we all have a choice to go to the dark side or go toward the light.
Yeah. And then I'm going a little deep here. So the last thing I'll say is I'm ready to engage with empathy and dialogue with anybody and everybody. And however, I may sometime come up against somebody who's not going to be able to see me as human and who may want to harm me or may want to harm my family member.
Okay, you're interested in, you want to engage in dialogue and empathy. One of your concerns is coming up against someone that will want to harm, won't agree and will want to harm you or someone in your family.
Yep. And then my last point is in the book. One of the more powerful things for me that I came across is how if we see symbols or signs of hatred or of tyranny, that we need to address it right then.
One of the things in the book that talked about signs of tyranny and other negativities, when we see it, we need to address it right at that moment. Thank you. Okay.
And that's very frightening.
It's frightening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good one. I want to talk to Randy about, I guess, group mentality.
I'm listening.
You know, I guess I'm kind of stuck on this today about the group mentality because I do know what it feels like to want to belong and what it feels like when you don't belong. I use high school as a good example when you're in with the cool kids or you're not.
Yeah, so the idea of group mentality and belonging especially really resonates with you. And one of the best examples that you have is high school, which, you know, being in the cool crowd can be really important to a lot of people. Yeah,
and I think the people that are advocating us going back to the good old days are people, many of whom I don't think have ever felt, they have felt marginalized. They have not felt part of America.
So people who refer to good old days and they want to go back to that time, you have the sense that they feel marginalized in the current moment, and that might be one of the reasons for wanting to go back to that time.
Yes. You know, I've seen some of the interviews, especially when the campaign was going on, and the mega group, they have the educated and the less than educated group of people. And the less than educated or not as educated, it always amazes me how they just parrot what they've heard said. And then when the interviewer asks them for specifics, they can't give it, or they don't know it.
So you recognize that there are both more and less educated groups within MAGA supporters, as it were, and it's always striking to you that when you see them question the less educated members of supporters of former president are questioned about their beliefs. They can't actually articulate where those beliefs come from.
Yeah. And those to me are the dangerous people, because they will follow just because it feels good to be in a group and have somebody else lead, take charge.
So the real danger that you see is from that crowd who are motivated by feeling good, feeling a sense of belonging and inclusion, and will just follow because of that motivation. Exactly.
I heard one news person interview this guy, and he said he didn't like critical race theory. He was totally against critical race theory. He didn't think it should be taught in the schools. And he just went on. And when the interviewer asked him, well, what is critical race theory? He said, I don't know, but I know I don't like it.
So there was an interview with a guy who was railing against, absolutely dead set against critical race theory, but when asked if he knew what it actually was, he didn't actually know what it was.
No, but he was all for being against it. So again, those are to me, the scary people. They're easily led. Then the other group are the educated ones, the ones that want power, have power, and don't want to give it up. And they will do anything to the extreme sometimes to obtain and retain that power.
Okay, so the two groups scare you in different ways. The first one scares you because they are easily led. The second group, perhaps the ones doing the leading, are the ones that are scary because they will do anything to actually retain power.
Exactly. So we have to be vigilant, and we have to get out of the mindset that this can't happen in America, because it can, and it is happening today.
Yeah, so we have to always be looking out and get rid of our mindset that America is immune from this, because we already see it happening here.
Yes, exactly. And I feel fully heard. That was right on time.
All right. Okay, I'm just taking some more notes. Okay. Edwin, if you would listen to me, I'd appreciate it.
Listening.
Okay. So I there's a few things that I want to reflect on that I've heard from others. One of these ideas that Linda had mentioned earlier was people who had no intention of committing violence were absolutely caught up in a group mentality, and she sees similar things happening with conspiracy theories, and I'd like to add to that that I think there are so many realms that this happens, including with cults.
So you want to add to what Linda was saying about people getting caught up in movements and doing things that they naturally wouldn't, and to add to that same dynamic happens in cults.
Yeah, and it really struck me. I think I might have mentioned this last time that I was in one of these events, that I was watching a show on HBO called The Vow about the NXIVM cult, and one of the guys who was involved said nobody joins a cult. Nobody. They join something. They join a good idea, and then they realize they were effed. So that was when I saw what happened with Ashley Babbitt, the woman who was killed at the January 6th riot. That I had recently viewed that, and it was such a strong association in my mind.
Mm-hmm. So it's people get caught up in cults. They don't think that they're joining a cult. They take them. They think it's, hey, this is a really good idea, but somehow it gets transformed into. They get pulled into a cult, and the Ashley Babbitt, her death somehow relates to that.
Yeah,
your
because
mind?
I really felt like, the mentality. I looked at some of her social media and stuff, and I just thought like her mentality was very similar in that regard.
So her mentality was very similar to the getting caught up in a cult
Yeah.
mindset.
And yeah, and I also want to reflect about the thoughts about politicians. I mean, Yaron mentioned that politicians often feel like they can't be honest. Edwin, I applaud you for your run for Congress, and I think we need more people like you. But I also believe that we demonize politicians too much in this country.
Yeah, so you're talking about what Euron was talking about with politicians, that you feel that they get demonized too much, and you're also applauding my running for Congress. So we need more of that.
Yeah, and I think that people who run for Congress and we eventually criticize, they generally start out motivated for the right reasons, but then they get into a system that is impossible to exist within in a fully ethical way.
So people come in with a good motivations, but the system keeps them from being fully ethical. So there's kind of problems. You're seeing problems with the system that corrupts people, I guess.
Yeah, and the way I think that Yaron was right in terms of the way we talk about them really kind of calcifies that system and really makes it gets rid of their motivation to be fully honest.
Yeah, so when they get judged for being dishonest, that kind of gets rid of their motivation for trying to be honest because they're being judged. I don't know if I quite got that, if that's what you're saying.
Yeah, there's just a lot of perverse incentives in our political system that perpetuate this culture of dishonesty that we criticize.
Yeah, this culture of dishonesty that we're criticizing. There's just a lot of different systemic things that dynamics that create that culture.
Yeah, and the last idea that I want to touch on is just the idea. I think when Judith was talking about evil and things, ideas that or people that she would consider evil. I think it was Judith who mentioned that. I really try to stay away. I don't like the idea of evil. I don't actually agree with the idea. I don't think evil really fully exists. And this has been a controversial thought when I've articulated it with a lot of people.
So you're addressing what Judith was saying about evil, and you don't feel comfortable with that term evil. I don't even think that it really exists. It's not a comfortable term for you.
Yeah, and I think that it relates to when folks have really sat down with people who have committed crimes, perhaps, and I think Judith talked about this as well, that have marked them as evil. When you really sit down and try to understand them and their story, something else emerges that is far more complex.
So when you really sit down with people who have been judged or called evil, and you really hear their story, it's much more complex than just a simple term like evil.
Yeah, and I think I think she also said that there's very little limit about who she'll sit down with and talk to. I see I have time, so I'll finish this thought. And I think that that's a really laudatory goal. And I also think that I love how modern screenwriters have, especially in this golden age of television that we're living through, have really emphasized the skill of seeing the other side. I think Cobra Kai as a show is a great example of this, where someone you were so sure was on the wrong side of the debate, you can really see the other side.
So you're applauding what Judith was saying, that she's willing to talk with pretty much everyone, and it sounds like you support that. And there's screenwriters who have sort of addressed that being that willingness to listen to and talk to everyone. And there's some shows that actually sort of, and screenwriters that sort of model that or have, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay, I closed the room, so 30 seconds,
Oh, this-
everyone will come back.
Okay, I
So
saw that pop up and I was like, trying to read it, went away. Okay, so we're finna be beamed, or they are gonna be
they're
beamed.
beaming us, the beaming down to us. Yeah, they're up in
This
the,
was a
in the
very
rooms.
good circle.
It was great.
This was
Yeah.
great.
It
This was a lot of
just
fun.
went smoothly. Yeah.
Yeah, I really wanted to comment on that evil. There's a book, The Science of Evil. And he's basically, it's Simon Baron Cohen, a academic in the UK. He's making the case that instead of saying the science of evil, I mean, use the word empathy erosion, because then you can kind of work with it, whereas evil is like a harder term to scientifically work with.
Love it.
So yeah,
Call it
welcome
out.
back.
Evil
Welcome.
is evil. That's it.
I'll send you the book. Everybody's back. There we go. Okay, so we're going to do our debrief. And Larry, do you want to lead us in the debrief?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So what I'd like to do is just go around the screen and everyone take about 30 seconds to a minute to share, what you thought of this experience of using empathy circles to have this kind of a dialogue. Randy, could I start with you? Would you share what this experience felt like?
Oh yeah, I would love to. I absolutely did feel fully heard. There was many people who were responding to my thoughts, and I got a chance to respond to other people's thoughts. And I really enjoyed that aspect of things. And one thing that I want to call out is that there were certain points where I wanted to. I was like, I'm going to address that point when I speak later, and I got a little focused on that. And I want to laud the structure of this group that that's not conducive to the direct response. Like you get to respond right after. It makes you wait. It makes you first listen to someone else who you weren't even listening to just now. And that can break you out, I think, out of the mindset of really focusing in on that one point that you wanted to respond to directly.
Thank you, Randy. And Judith, would you share what your experience was like?
Yeah, I noticed that too, what Randy's saying, that, we can feel that we want to respond immediately, but the structure keeps us in a listening mode. And then it actually gives our thought process a time to develop a bit. I mean, we're listening, but when it's our turn to speak, we can respond. So I felt like there was a lot of responsiveness to what had been said previously, in addition to the reflection. Yeah. And we touched on really important, critical issues that came up in the book, like evil. Well, that was me. You can blame me for that one.
Thank you, Judith. And Jorian, would you share, please?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Randy and Judith. I was in the same group, and I liked the way that we were responding to each other's things, and not just saying our own thing and then somebody else said their own thing. It's kind of a little bit more connected. On the other hand, it's fairly complicated for me to listen to somebody and then come back to my own thing immediately after that. So I'm just seeing this as a challenge that will stretch my limits.
Thank you, Jorian. Donna, would you share, please?
Yeah, we had a lively discussion or exchange and had some differences of opinions, particularly on vaccinations. So it did extend our listening capacity from all of us agreeing on things. I wonder here in the end when we debrief, we emphasize the empathy circle, but could we, or why don't we share some of the points addressing the book's issues? That's my only thought, but yeah, it's working. And I agree, it does cause you to pause and not just react. So that's good.
And Joan, would you share, please?
Me? Is that me?
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
It's you, Joan.
Yes.
Oh, okay, it said John. I was looking at. Yes, I was in Adana's group, and I kind of felt the same way. I didn't expect to be talking about anything but the book, and we started that way, but we kind of went off. And but I think it was probably an important discussion, and it was good to be able to look at different opinions and not get any, at least I didn't feel any hostility or anything like that. So it was a good, lively group, and I appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you, Joan. And Celine, would you share, please?
Yes, I was in the same group. And so it was like, okay, we have some disagreement here. And what I found was that with each perspective, something in me opened up. It's like, oh, well, that's something to think about, you know. And so I'm also thinking about how the empathy circles can work in a group discussion about, you know, tyranny, for example, and moving forward and maybe choosing a stance or actions. So all of that's whirring around in here. It was very stimulating. Thank you.
Thank you, Celine. And Candy, would you share, please?
We all, for the most part, agreed. And the last person who spoke in our group pointed this out, that, and I think that the experience of the empathy circle would be different if there were more differing opinions. Because, and that's really where it, I would think, would do its most good when there was disagreement, which we didn't really have. So, which, thinking about this in the last couple of minutes made me realize that I had expressed the view that I'm not a huge fan yet of the empathy circle because it feels unnatural to me. There's not a flow of ideas. There's this. Now, I will say that the idea that it forces you to pause before responding, that's a good thing. That is good. But I'm not used to having conversation around which there is so much structure. And, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not used to it. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Candy. And Jana, would you share, please?
Well, I really appreciated the discussion about ethics and the chapter about ethics. And I just kind of expressed the wish that maybe empathy circles also discuss ethics so that we can have antidotes to tyranny and focus on the antidotes and not just on what's wrong. And wonderful circle. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana. And Glenn, would you share, please?
I want to second what Donna said, that I think at this final thing, we shouldn't just talk about process, but I'd really like to hear some of the points that came up in other groups. We had a really stimulating and great session. We agreed a lot, but both chapters, I felt like we really brought out a lot of interesting points about ethics, that it's not a personal thing, there are principles, and that professional ethics are good but not enough. And then, talking about violence and militarism was stimulating but scary. And I love that we and Sally's utopia kind of was a great counterpoint to some of the scary parts of the book.
Thank you, Glenn. Erin, would you share, please?
it was my first time learning the empathy circle, so I'm curious to learn more. I had an enjoyable experience, and next time I'll be prepared with my readings. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. And Deidre, would you share, please?
Yeah. I think that I'm finding that the book is a great conversation starter, but the structure is so new often that just stepping outside of wanting to be understood yourself and really centering another person's, desire to be heard and understood. I think that that's an excellent exercise, and I'm glad that we do it.
Thank you, Deidre. And Sally, would you share, please?
Well, we had a really special group. Well, between Glenn, who teaches or taught ethics and 10 different types, and then Jenna's 3 types of ethics. Anyway, it took a great step in a direction I found that maybe there should be a group specialized in ethics, and that might be a good way to introduce cautious people who may not be ready for what we have here.
Thank you, Sally. And Greg, would you share, please?
I thought our group was real good. I was with Deidre's group. I like what Randy said about this format makes me pause before I respond to someone else's idea. And it occurred to me, thinking about that what I do in normal conversation often is defend myself. But I'm sort of phony about it. I try to make it look like, oh, I'm an open-minded guy, but really what I'm doing is backpedaling and going, wait a minute, you're criticizing an idea that I just recently attached myself to. And so that's what I like about this format. On the other hand, what like Candy was saying is that the normal flow of a conversation makes me wonder, it would be great to do this and then everybody go down to the saloon and just get together afterwards and have regular conversation. And then I could see, oh, there's the difference. This other format and the more what you might call conversational format, and see the strengths of both and the weaknesses of both.
Thank you, Greg. And Linda, would you share, please?
Okay. I really enjoyed our circle today. It just flowed with the speaker, listener, and all like that. And we did touch on ethics, but the primary conversation was on groups and the feeling of being part of a group, exclusion and inclusion, and how that can, motivate people to do things that they wouldn't normally do or say. It was a good discussion, and one of the people at which I had never thought about was how we put people, they go into the military and they have boot camp where they train you the way they want to train you to think and do what they want you to do, but they don't have a exit for that. It was a very good discussion.
Thank you, Linda. And Mary, did you get a chance to go yet, Mary?
Well, I didn't, Mary. It's my turn now. At any rate, I enjoyed it as usual. There was conversation about the whole idea of U.S. military and the purpose of the U.S. military around the world. Reference was made to Smedley Butler in his statements about war. War is a racket. I thought that was interesting. That was brought up. it was a good conversation. I won't say anything else. That's all, folks.
Thank you, Mary. And I'd just like to share that I love the empathy circle format. I think it, kind of gets me out of my own silo thinking and allows me to expand and listening, including everyone. And it makes a much better soup than I would make. So, and Edwin, how was your experience?
Yeah, it was quite wide ranging. And what I tend to do is wherever the conversation goes, I connect it to empathy. I was saying, like, for me, it's, being from the director, of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy and running on the empathy platform, it's like every problem I see is, I want to hit it with the empathy hammer. And sort of, and I do think that any problem that comes up, the first thing is we need to be able to hear each other, to hear what the scope of the problem is, and that's really an issue of listening, empathy, and constructive dialogue. And I think that's what we're doing here. And it's just everyone's insights. I just feel like really enriched me. I just like my brain is expanded. Through everyone, my neurons have connected everyone else's neurons and got this bigger brain here, which is really great. So with that, we have, where are we at? So next week, we're up for the next 2 chapters. And so we're set for that. Someone said, diversity of opinions. And it is great when there's people that you're in conflict with. The empathy circle is really good for, like, when something's really tough, where naturally people would start yelling and screaming at each other. It slows things down so you can really hear each other. So I invite you to go out and invite people who you have different opinions than you. Go to the wherever. I've been to the Republican conventions twice to reach out to Republicans to go do empathy circles with them. So I invite you to reach out to whoever, any friends, especially enemies, bring them into the circle. And so I did see Donna. You had a point?
Well, I'm just curious, you've mentioned, am I muted? No.
No, I hear you.
Okay. That you're running for office. I wondered, I think it's Pennsylvania, right? Where are you running for office?
I am running in California, Congressional District 8.
Okay.
And I'll put the link. I'm working on the website now. It's edwinforcongress.com. It's still in a bit of a rough shape. I just got my Meet Edwin description up there, so you can see a little bit about me. And it's slowly taking shape. And there's a link to volunteer. So if you want to volunteer, do click the volunteer link, add your contact info. And the whole campaign is about empathy. How do we bring different parts of the community together, listen to them, bring them together in dialogue. So yeah, do check that out and volunteer, because we only have 4 months until the primary election. So I think that was it for me. Joan, did you have anything for our closing?
Well, I just want to mention, with your enthusiasm for bringing in different points of view, this is a book club, and it's about people that want to read on tyranny and are concerned about democracy. I mean, we welcome anybody, but that is our focus. Right.
Right. Yeah. Linda?
Yes, and I just want to suggest that you may have to go to a friend to go to that friend, get that friend to go to somebody else to get somebody with an opposing view. That's what I had to do, and the lady couldn't make it to this Saturday, but hopefully she'll be here next Saturday. So I had to go to a friend who has a wider circle and say, I'm looking for someone that has a different political view. So.
Great. And then it's also getting easier. Like, we did the video of the how-to the first couple times, but now everybody's familiar with it. So we can, next time we'll skip the intros and get right into the circles. You have a lot more time to dialogue with each other, and we'll kind of mix it up a little bit. So, okay, well, let's get maybe a jazz hands if you feel good with that. A little bit of mirroring creates connection. So we'll see you next week, and have a good time. Thanks for joining us.